Hey, I'm Narezo from Flamenco Explained, and this is part 2 of a video that we're making to prepare you for our new series on the Flamenco Explained site of Cante Play Along. So we recorded a bunch of Cante with a fantastic singer from Granada called Antonio El Turri. And what we did is we shot it without guitar so that you can learn to actually play along and accompany singing yourself at home, because chances are you don't have access to a singer. And one of the questions that comes up a lot is about the different ways that you can accompany someone singing in the same key by using your capo. So most of what he sang in the video was what we call al aire, which means without a capo. And the stuff, for example, that he sang por medio is in this key, right? A Phrygian without a capo. So in part 1 of this video, we talked about the fact that that's B flat to A, but that there are other ways to play to accompany this. And people sometimes get confused when they see a soleá played, but we're not using these shapes, or a bulería and you don't see these shapes. So what's going on? And that's what we're going to get at in this video, are the different ways to accompany without changing key in absolute terms, right? So the thing we clarified in part 1 of this video is that we're going to call this B flat to A, but as soon as I put the capo here, I'm not calling it that anymore. And we're going to look at how to use this information. We're going to look at a tientos because it's nice and slow and it's pretty simple. And we're just going to look at the salida, and we're going to talk about how you accompany this using different sets of voicings, different shapes, different grips, whatever you want to call that. The salida is technically not part of the letra, right? So when a singer starts to sing, there's a little something before the letra. And that's what we're going to look at. And all he's singing really, or what he is singing, I should say, is simply accompanied by B flat and A, B flat and A. So I'm going to show you how that would be done in the traditional por medio key that's used for tientos, right? Most of the time you're going to see tientos played here, but then we're going to look at other shapes and grips that we can use to accompany the same key. So in this video that we're looking at, everything is in the key of A, and I say the key of A, what I mean by that is a piano player or a tuner would say that's A, but we're going to call it different stuff when we put on the capo, and that's what we're going to talk about in a minute. So before we do that, let's just look at what I would play for the salida por medio in the really traditional way to accompany this. Now, I did not do most of what I would do if I was really accompanying that, because I just wanted to show you that all we need to play for that salida are these two chords, right? Da, da. That's all we're doing, B flat to A. Now, if I wanted to play this with a different set of shapes, da, 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 his singing is never going to change, but I'm going to change what I do with my hands by using a capo. The first thing I need to do is figure out where would the capo go, depending on what sets of shapes I want to do. So if we're going from here to here, right, I need to say, okay, this is ba-na-na-na-na-na. If I want to play an E shape for that, then my root is going to be on the 6th string, not on the 5th, right? Because the root of this chord is on the 6th string. So where do I have that note on the 6th string? Well, it happens to be, and I know this, on the 5th fret. If you don't know this, you're gonna look for it and you're gonna find it, right? So here's that note. You don't even need to know that it's A, right? You're por medio, and you wanna be por arriba, which means your root is gonna be on the 6th string. It's here. So that's where my capo is gonna go. I'm here, right? So this is the same note that we had a minute ago, right? But now I'm gonna play what looks like and what we're going to call F and E, right? And one of the things I talked about in part 1 of this video is that no flamenco guitarist is going to say that this is B flat to A. Every pianist, every violinist, everyone who doesn't use a capo on their instrument is going to call this B flat and this A. But every guitarist is going to call this F and E because this is the F shape. And once you put the capo on, it gets so confusing to think about the absolute key that you're in that we don't do that. And in flamenco, if a singer wanted you to play por arriba, they would say al cinco, right, at the 5th fret, por arriba. So there you go. Now, if I play the same salida, you're going to see how this works. What I really need to know as a flamenco guitarist is that this sounds the same as this did over here, right? Now, there's other keys we could do this in, and I want to show you this for a second so that you get the concept, because por medio and por arriba are the two most common. But let's say, for example, we wanted to play this in the Taranta key. Knowing that the root of the Taranta chord is here, then again, I don't have to think in terms of B flat and A, but I still need to know that this is da, da, that's the sound I'm looking for, right? So once I find that, right, to play this shape, I had the capo here. To play this shape, I have the capo back here. Why? Because if I had no capo on, Taranta would be here, right? 2nd fret in relation to the open string, right? So if this is now supposed to be the 2nd fret in relation to the open string, then I put the capo 2 frets back on the 3rd fret. Let that sink in for a second, right? So B flat to A, B flat to A, B flat to A, right? All the same sound. Bum, 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 bum. And now with the magic of editing, you're gonna see that this is exactly the same as this, which is exactly the same as this. And of course, it's not exactly the same. It's kind of the same. It's the same key. In absolute terms, it is the same key. But it sounds really different. So let's do this now with the Taranta chords and see what that sounds like. The biggest confusion in all of this is the idea of a key. Because if we didn't have a capo on, we would simply say A, right? And we would play it on the piano. If we had to play an A, we would always be in the same place. On every other instrument, A is always A. The confusion, which I covered in part 1 of this video, is that on the guitar, we don't talk in absolute terms once we start using a capo. At least in flamenco, we don't. So these notes are the same wherever the capo is. It doesn't matter. This is, in absolute terms, the key of A. But on the guitar, we're going to call these different, and there's really no word other than key, which is where the confusion comes in, right? I talk about the key of Taranta as being F sharp, but it's really a set of shapes for the left hand that give us distinctive sounding voicings of chords depending on where the capo is and what open strings I'm using. So this A sounds really different from that A, sounds really different from that A, even though they're all the same key, A, right? So the tricky part is that in English, when we talk about flamenco, we use this word key, and it has two meanings, and it can get really confusing. So if you have any confusion about this, make sure you watch part 1 of this video, because that's where I try to clear that up in terms of what we call these chords versus what they really are, and versus what their function is. So I would say, in a sense, the easiest thing is to just forget about the names of anything. But you know that you're looking for this sound. And you can play it, as we've seen here. You can play it here with the capo here. You can play it with the capo here. And there's other places you could play it, because there are different, keys, tonos, on the flamenco guitar that we use to accompany or just to play. And the more you understand this concept, the easier it is to understand the relationship between all of these different ways of playing what's essentially, this set of chords in different places on the guitar.